Captain Jihoon Park was having a perfectly normal Tuesday when everything went wrong. He sat in his chair on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, drinking his third cup of coffee and watching the asteroid field drift past the main screen. The ship was supposed to be mining rare metals, not discovering new parts of the galaxy. "Captain," said Engineer Minji Kim from her station. She looked tired and slightly annoyed. "The FTL drive is making that weird noise again." Jihoon sighed. "What kind of weird noise?" "Like a washing machine that's trying to eat itself." Communications Officer Hyunwoo Lee looked up from his console. "Should I file a maintenance report?" "Later," Jihoon said. "Let's just finish this mining run and head home. I have a meeting with headquarters tomorrow morning." Minji pressed some buttons on her control panel. The weird noise got louder. Then it got much louder. Then the entire ship started shaking, like it was in an earthquake. Captain?" Minji said, staring at her screens. "I think we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where we accidentally broke physics." Before Jihoon could ask what that meant, the stars outside the window suddenly stretched into long lines of light. The ship felt like it was being squeezed through a tube that was too small. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The stars were different now. Instead of the familiar patterns they knew, there were massive structures floating in space. Ships that looked like they were made of crystal, and light surrounded them. Each ship was easily 10 times bigger than the Soul's Pride. "Well," Jihoon said, taking another sip of coffee, "this is new." Hyunwoo's communication board started beeping like crazy. "Captain, we're getting signals from everywhere. Different languages, different frequencies. It's like the entire galaxy just noticed us." "Can you understand any of it?" "The computer is trying to translate. Most of it seems to be surprised, and some of it sounds like military chatter." Minji was still staring at her engineering displays. "Captain, according to these readings, we just traveled about 50,000 light-years in 3 seconds. Is that good or bad?" "I have no idea. The physics don't make sense. One of the crystal ships moved closer to them. It was beautiful in a way that should have been inspiring, but Jihoon mostly noticed that it was blocking their path home. The ship looked like someone had carved it from a giant diamond and filled it with rainbow light. "Incoming transmission," Hyunwoo announced. "I think they want to talk." "Put it on screen." The main display flickered and showed the face of something that definitely wasn't human. It had blue skin, 4 eyes, and what looked like crystals growing from its forehead. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into Korean. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the sovereign space of the Celestial Dominion. Identify yourself immediately or face the consequences." Jihoon looked at his crew. They looked back at him. Nobody seemed particularly worried. "This is Captain Jihoon Park of the research vessel Soul's Pride," he said into the communication system. "We're from Earth. We seem to have made a wrong turn somewhere." The alien on the screen looked confused. "Earth? That designation does not exist in our star charts. How did you penetrate our border defenses?" "Honestly, we have no idea. Our FTL drive broke and we ended up here. Look, we don't want any trouble. Can you just point us toward home?" The alien's 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that looked like Morse code. "You penetrated the most secure border in the galaxy. By accident?" "Seems that way," Jihoon said. "These things happen." More crystal ships appeared around them, dozens, then hundreds. They formed a perfect sphere with the Soul's Pride in the center. Each ship was pointing weapons that looked like they could turn a planet into dust. "Wow," Minji said, looking at the display. Those are some big guns. Yeah, Hyunwoo agreed. Pretty impressive engineering. I wonder what the power requirements are. The alien on screen seemed to be having trouble processing their reactions. You are surrounded by the Imperial fleet. You should be terrified. Jihoon looked around again. Should we be? I mean, you seem reasonable. We're just lost. Lost, the alien repeated slowly. Right. Lost. It happens to everyone sometimes. Last week, I got lost trying to find a new restaurant in Seoul. This is basically the same thing, just with more spaceships. The alien disappeared from the screen for a moment. When it came back, there were several other aliens standing behind it. They were all talking in voices too quiet for the translator to pick up. Human vessel, the alien said finally. You will be escorted to the capital world for evaluation. How long will that take? Jihoon asked. We have schedules to keep. Schedules? Yeah, work stuff, meetings, you know how it is. The alien stared at them for a long moment. You will follow our lead ship. Do not deviate from the designated course. Sure. Thing, Jihoon said. Just don't go too fast. This is a mining ship, not a race car. The transmission ended. The crystal ships began moving, forming a formation around the Soul's Pride. They moved slowly, which Jihoon appreciated. So, Minji said, getting up to stretch, we accidentally discovered aliens. Looks that way, Jihoon replied. And they have a galactic empire, apparently, and we're being taken to their capital world. Seems like it. Minji nodded thoughtfully. I'm going to miss my drama tonight. The one with the time-traveling chef? Yeah. Tonight's the episode where he finally confesses to the baker. Hyunwoo looked up from his station. You can probably watch it later. Don't they have reruns? It's not the same, Minji said sadly. Jihoon watched the alien fleet guide them through space. The ships were certainly impressive, but he'd seen impressive things before. Seoul had some pretty amazing buildings. This was just buildings that could fly and had laser guns. Hyunwoo, send a message back to Earth, he said. Tell them we'll be late for the quarterly review meeting. Probably very late. What should I say happened? Tell them we got lost and found aliens. They'll think it's a joke until we get back. If we get back, Minji pointed out, we'll get back, Jihoon said with confidence. These aliens seem pretty organized. They'll probably have us fill out some forms and send us home. You think? Sure. First contact protocols exist for a reason. There's probably a whole department that handles this kind of thing. The crystal ships around them began to glow brighter as they approached what looked like a massive space station. It was the size of a moon and covered in lights that pulsed in complex patterns. That's their capital? Hyunwoo asked. I guess, Jihoon said. Pretty big. Think they have good food? Only one way to find out. As the Soul's Pride was guided into a docking bay that could have held 1,000 ships their size, none of the humans seemed particularly amazed or worried. They were just 3 people from Seoul who'd gotten lost on their way to work. They had no idea that in the next few hours, they would accidentally begin the most significant culture clash in galactic history. They also had no idea that their complete lack of amazement was about to drive an ancient galactic empire to the edge of an existential crisis. All they knew was that they were going to be very late getting home. Admiral Soo-young Cho had seen many strange things in her 20 years of space service, but walking through a corridor made of living crystal while chewing mint gum was definitely a new experience. The alien escort guards kept looking at her. jaw movements like she might be preparing to spit acid at them. "Is there Wi-Fi here?" she asked the tall blue alien leading their group. "Why? Fee?" the alien repeated slowly. "Wireless internet, for checking messages and stuff." The alien looked confused. "We have quantum communication networks spanning the galaxy. But can I check my email?" "What is email?" So-young sighed. "Never mind." Behind her, Ensign Dongyuk Nam was complaining about the artificial gravity. "It feels weird," he told Engineer Minji Kim, "like walking on a trampoline." "Yeah," Minji agreed. "And everything echoes. Did they not discover sound dampening?" Captain Ji-hoon Park walked beside them, looking around at the crystal walls that showed moving pictures of space battles and alien ceremonies. "It's very shiny," he said politely. The aliens had been talking about the grand throne room of eternal majesty for the entire walk. They seemed excited about it. The humans mostly hoped it had comfortable chairs. When the massive doors opened, even the humans had to admit it was impressive. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into clouds. The floor was made of black stone that reflected everything like a perfect mirror. Gravity seemed to work differently here, with waterfalls flowing upward and tiny suns floating. Near the walls, hundreds of alien species filled the room. Some looked like giant insects, others like living rocks, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. They were all kneeling on the floor facing a throne that floated in the center of the room. The throne itself was carved from what looked like a meteorite and surrounded by rings of light that spun slowly around it. Sitting on the throne was the most impressive alien they'd seen yet. Tall, covered in silver skin that moved like liquid metal, with eyes that looked like stars. "Behold," their escort announced in a voice that echoed through the room, "Emperor Velthara, ruler of 50,000 star systems, master of the celestial dominion, keeper of the ancient laws." All the aliens in the room bowed lower. The humans stood there looking around. "This is pretty cool," Dongyuk said quietly. "Reminds me of that movie with the space wizards." "Which one?" Minji asked. "The one with the glowing swords?" "Oh yeah, except this has better special effects." Emperor Velthara rose from his throne. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Beings from the unknown world, called Earth, you stand before the might and majesty of the celestial dominion. For 10,000 years, our empire has brought order to the chaos of space. Our fleets have conquered worlds beyond counting. Our wisdom has guided countless species to enlightenment." Su-young raised her hand. "Excuse me, Your Majesty, but do you validate parking? We left our ship in what looked like a loading zone." The Emperor paused mid-speech. Several aliens in the crowd made gasping sounds. "Parking," the Emperor said. "Yeah, we don't want to get towed. Is there like a ticket system or something?" Ji-hoon stepped forward helpfully. "Also, we were wondering about your complaint resolution process. We're technically here against our will, so there might be some legal issues." "Legal issues?" The Emperor's star-like eyes flickered. "Nothing major," Ji-hoon assured him. "Just standard stuff. Unlawful detention, transportation without consent, that kind of thing. I'm sure we can work it out." The Emperor had been giving this speech for over 1,000 years. Aliens usually responded with terror, awe, or attempts to worship him. None of them had ever asked about parking validation. "You do not seem impressed," he said carefully. "Oh, it's very impressive," Minji said quickly. "The engineering alone must be incredible. How do you get the gravity to work differently in different parts of the room?" And the acoustics are amazing, Dong-hyuk added, though you might want to add some sound dampening. The echo could give people headaches during long ceremonies. Emperor Velthara looked at his advisors, who were standing behind his throne looking equally confused. One of them, a creature that looked like a crystal tree, leaned forward and whispered something. "My advisor informs me," the Emperor said slowly, "that you are the first beings to enter our space uninvited and survive." "Really?" Soo-young said, blowing a small bubble with her gum. "That seems like poor security planning. You might want to review your protocols." "We have the most advanced defense systems in the galaxy." "Sure, but we got through them by accident." "That's like a bank vault that only stops people who are actually trying to rob it." The Emperor's throne began rotating faster, which seemed to be a sign of agitation. "You were brought here to witness the power of the Dominion and understand your place in the cosmic order." "Okay," Ji-hoon said. "What's our place?" "You will—" the Emperor started, then stopped. "What do you mean, what's your place?" "Well, you said we need to understand our place in the cosmic order. What place did you have in mind?" The Emperor had never been asked this question directly. Usually, beings either submitted immediately or fought and were destroyed. These humans seemed to be waiting for a job description. "You will kneel before the might of the Dominion," he declared. The humans looked at each other. "Is kneeling mandatory?" Soo-young asked. "Because I have bad knees." "And what's the long-term career path for kneeling?" Dong-hyuk added. "Is there advancement opportunities?" Minji pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "This is definitely going on social media. My friends won't believe this place exists." "What is that device?" One of the Emperor's advisors demanded. "A phone. For pictures and videos." She held it up. "Say cheese, Your Majesty." The flash went off. Every alien in the room except the humans immediately threw themselves flat on the floor. "Did I do something wrong?" Minji asked. "Emperor." Velthara's star eyes were now flickering rapidly. "That device, it generated a photon burst without warning." "Yeah, that's the flash. For better lighting." "In our culture, unexpected light bursts are a declaration of war." "Oh." Minji looked at her phone. "Sorry about that. I can turn the flash off." The Emperor stared at her for a long moment. 10,000 years of ruling the galaxy had not prepared him for beings who accidentally declared war with photography equipment and then apologized politely. "You are very strange beings," he said finally. "Thanks," Ji-hoon said. "You're pretty." "Interesting, too. That floating throne is really something. Must save a lot on furniture costs. The throne of eternal majesty is carved from the heart of a dying star." "Wow, that's got to be expensive. Have you considered synthetic alternatives? Much more cost-effective." General Krikstar, the Emperor's military advisor, stepped forward. He was 8 feet tall, covered in scales, and had fought in 100 galactic wars. "Perhaps these humans need a demonstration of our military might," he growled. "Would that help with the parking situation?" Soo-young asked, hopefully. General Krikstar's scales changed color, which indicated extreme confusion among his species. The Emperor looked around his throne room at the hundreds of aliens still prostrated. On the floor, then at the 5 humans standing casually and discussing practical concerns like they were at a shopping mall. "This audience is concluded," he announced. "The humans will be taken to quarters for further evaluation." "Great," Ji-hoon said. "Is room service available? We missed lunch." As they were led away by increasingly bewildered guards, none of the The humans noticed that they had just caused the first existential crisis in the Celestial Dominion's 10,000-year history. Behind them, Emperor Velthara sat alone on his floating throne, staring at the spot where 5 beings had stood completely unimpressed by everything that was supposed to inspire awe throughout the galaxy. "Get me the diplomatic corps," he told his advisors quietly. "We need to figure out what just happened." Anthropologist Yunji Seo was having the time of her life, even if she was the only one who knew it. The Dominion had assigned their best cultural guides to show the humans the greatest achievements of their civilization. What they didn't expect was for Yunji to rate everything like she was reviewing restaurants on her phone. "This is the floating city of Velkara," announced their guide, a proud alien who looked like a cross between a peacock and a crystal chandelier. "It has floated in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant for 12,000 years, defying gravity itself through pure artistic vision." The city was beautiful. Spires of living crystal stretched through pink and gold clouds, connected by bridges that looked like frozen lightning. Millions of beings lived and worked in structures that should have been impossible, held aloft by technology that was part science and part art. Yunji took photos and made notes on her phone. "Very pretty," she said. 3 out of 5 stars. 3 out of 5? The guide asked weakly. "Yeah. Points for originality and visual appeal, but I have to dock points for practicality. What happens during storm season? And there's no earthquake protection at all. One good wind, and this whole place would be scattered across the planet." Trade Representative Jae-hyun. Oh was studying the city's layout with a different kind of interest. "The traffic flow is terrible," he observed. "You've got major bottlenecks at every transport hub. And why are the commercial districts so far from the residential areas? People must waste hours commuting every day." The guide's crystal feathers dimmed noticeably. "The layout follows sacred geometric principles passed down through millennia." "Sacred. Or not, it's inefficient," Jae-hyun said kindly. "Have you considered studying Earth's urban planning models? Seoul has some great examples of how to optimize foot traffic." Captain Jihoon Park was more interested in the practical aspects. "How do you get supplies up here? That's a lot of gravity to fight against." "We have mastered the ancient arts of levitation." But what's the energy cost? This must use enormous amounts of power." The guide looked around desperately at the other aliens in their tour group. They were all staring at the humans with growing confusion. This was supposed to be the moment when visitors fell to their knees in wonder at the Dominion's achievements. "Perhaps," the guide said hopefully, "you would be more impressed by the great library of all knowledge." The great library was even more spectacular than the floating city. It existed in folded space, with reading rooms that stretched to infinity, and books that wrote themselves as knowledge was discovered. The sum total of 10 million years of galactic civilization was stored here, accessible through thought alone. Ensign Dong-hyuk Nam walked into the main reading hall and immediately started looking around with professional interest. "This is really cool," he said, "but the organization system could use work. The books arrange themselves according to the cosmic harmonies of..." "Yeah, but what if you're looking for something specific? Like, if I wanted to find books about engine repair, would I have to think cosmic harmony of mechanical knowledge? Or could I just search for engine repair?" The librarian, a being made of pure thought who had never been questioned about filing systems, flickered uncertainly. Engineer Minji Kim was examining the self-writing books. "The real-time updating is impressive," she admitted. "But what's the backup system? What happens if the main servers crash?" "Servers?" the librarian asked. Your data storage. This has to be running on some kind of computational matrix, right? What's your redundancy planning? Communications Officer Hyun-Woo Lee had found a section about galactic history and was speed reading through 10,000 years of war and conquest. Interesting, he said, but a lot of this could have been avoided with better communication protocols. Did anyone ever try just talking to each other before the whole invasion thing? Admiral Soo-Young Cho was less interested in the books than in the building itself. She was chewing gum and taking notes on her phone about security weaknesses and fire exits. The next stop was the Eternal Flame, a sacred fire that had burned continuously since the founding of the Dominion. It was kept in a temple that existed partially outside normal space-time, tended by monks who had devoted their lives to keeping it lit. "Behold," the guide said, now sounding somewhat desperate, "the eternal flame. It has burned for 50,000 years without interruption, fed by the pure essence of starlight itself." The humans gathered around the flame, which danced with colors that didn't have names and gave off warmth that touched the soul. "Pretty," Yunja said, taking a picture. "But what's the point?" The monks who had taken vows of silence 10,000 years ago all turned to stare at her. "I mean, it's a nice flame and all, but what does it do? Is it powering something, providing heat for the city, cooking food?" "It burns eternal," one of the monks whispered, breaking his vow for the first time in centuries. "Right, but why? On Earth we have eternal flames at monuments and stuff, but they're symbols. This seems like a waste of good energy." Jae-hyun was doing calculations on his phone. "If you converted this to a proper power generation system, you could probably supply electricity to half the planet. Think of the economic benefits." The monks looked like they were having collective heart attacks. "Or," Minji suggested helpfully, "you could at least use it for something practical, like a really big barbecue. This thing could cook for millions of people." The head monk sat down heavily on the temple steps and stared at nothing. Their final stop was supposed to be the crown jewel of the tour, the infinite gardens of Velthari, where plants from every world in the Dominion grew in impossible harmony, creating a paradise that had inspired poets for millennia. The gardens were incredible. Trees that sang in harmony with flowers that changed color with the music. Vines that grew in mathematical spirals, creating natural sculptures. Fruits that tasted like memories and streams that flowed uphill just because it looked nicer that way. "Now this is practical," Yoonji said approvingly. "Sustainable agriculture, efficient land use, and good aesthetic planning. 4 out of 5. Stars." "4 out of 5? The guide asked. He sounded like he was about to cry. "Yeah, this is really well done. Only complaint is the lack of integrated pest management. You're going to have problems with invasive species eventually." "What would make it 5 stars?" Dong-yuk asked curiously. "Better soil composition monitoring and maybe some greenhouses for year-round growing. Oh, and benches. Beautiful gardens are nice, but people need places to sit." The guide, a being who had spent 3 centuries perfecting his tours and had never received anything less than worshipful praise, sat down on a crystal bench and put his head in his hands. "Are you okay?" Ji-hoon asked with genuine concern. "I do not understand," the guide said quietly. "These are the greatest achievements of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. How can you see them and not be amazed?" The humans looked at each other. "They're very nice," Soo-Young said kindly. "Really impressive engineering and artistry. It's just, well, they're things, you know? Pretty things, useful things, but still just things." but they represent the pinnacle of cosmic achievement. Sure, Minji said. Like the pyramids on Earth or the space stations around Mars. Humans build impressive stuff, too. It's what intelligent species do. You have structures like these on your world? Not exactly like these, Jaehyun said. But we've got some pretty cool things. Seoul Tower, the Burj Khalifa, the International Space Station. Different styles. Same basic idea. And the floating cities? We're working on it. Give us another 50 years and we'll probably have some. The guide stared at them for a long moment. You are not impressed because you believe you could build such things yourselves? Well, Hyunwoo said thoughtfully, maybe not right now, but eventually, yeah, probably. Your species is not filled with wonder at our achievements because you see them as temporary technical advantages. That's a good way to put it, Jaehoon agreed. For the first time in 3 centuries, the guide began to understand why the emperor was having daily meetings with his advisors about the human problem. These beings weren't unimpressed because they were ignorant or primitive. They were unimpressed because they saw the greatest works of the Dominion and thought, we could do that too, probably. That night, as the humans settled into their quarters and left reviews of their day on Yoonji's phone like they were tourists visiting a particularly elaborate theme park, emergency meetings were being held across the capital. The Dominion had spent 50,000 years as the undisputed masters of the galaxy. Now, for the first time, they had encountered beings who looked at their greatest achievements and saw room for improvement. Nobody was quite sure what to do about that. Media specialist Bo Young-kang was trying to figure out why everyone kept pointing cameras at her. The Dominion's news networks had sent crews from across the galaxy to document the humans, and somehow she'd become their favorite subject. Could you look more amazed? Asked the reporter, a creature that looked like a purple octopus wearing jewelry. We're standing in front of the planet Cracker, the most feared weapon in galactic history. Bo Young looked at the massive ship floating outside. The viewing window? It was certainly big, and the fact that it could split planets in half was impressive from an engineering standpoint. But mostly it just looked like a really large, impractical mining tool. It's very big, she said politely. Big? The reporter's tentacles writhed in frustration. This weapon has ended wars. Entire species surrender rather than face its power. Okay, Bo Young said. But wouldn't it be more cost-effective to just blockade a planet? Planet cracking seems like overkill for most situations. She yawned. The reporter's tentacles went limp. The footage of Bo Young yawning at the planet cracker was broadcast across 50,000 star systems within hours. On worlds where beings had built religions around the terrible power of that weapon, crowds gathered to watch the clip of a human treating it like a mildly interesting piece of heavy machinery. Security Chief Wu Jin Jang wasn't much better for the media's purposes. When they brought him to meet the legendary warriors of Sector 7, beings who had conquered 200 worlds and never known defeat, he spent most of the time asking about their benefits package. So you get medical coverage? He asked their leader, a 8-foot-tall creature covered in scars and battle armor. Medical coverage? The warrior rumbled. Yeah, health insurance, dental, vision, that kind of thing. Conquering worlds seems like dangerous work. We do not fear death. Right, but what about non-fatal injuries? Twisted ankles, pulled muscles, that sort of thing. Who covers the medical bills? The warrior looked confused. We heal our wounds with honor? Honor doesn't pay for physical therapy, Wu Jin pointed. Out. And what about retirement planning? You can't conquer worlds forever. By the end of the interview, the warriors of Sector 7 were asking their HR department about implementing a better benefits system. The galactic media couldn't get enough of it. News programs that usually covered epic space battles and diplomatic crises began running segments about humans doing completely ordinary things. The most popular show became What Will the Humans Think?, where they showed footage of impressive galactic landmarks and tried to predict how the humans would react. Today, we're at the crystal caverns of Morthka, where the very walls sing the songs of the cosmos, announced the host. What do you think the humans will say? They'll probably ask about the acoustics, suggested one panelist, or complain about the echo, added another. My money's on them wanting to install better lighting. When the humans actually visited the crystal caverns, Minji Kim did indeed comment on the poor lighting and suggested some relatively inexpensive improvements to the sound system. The show's ratings went through the roof. Emperor Velthara was not pleased with this development. He'd called an emergency meeting of the High Council, which consisted of the most powerful beings in the Dominion. "Explain to me," he said to General Krikstar, "how 5 lost tourists have become the most famous beings in the galaxy. The media finds them interesting, Your Majesty." Interesting? They're boring. They look at our greatest achievements and ask about maintenance costs. Yes, Your Majesty. That's what makes them interesting. Admiral Tharex, a crystalline being who commanded 1,000 war fleets, spoke up nervously. The troops are talking. About them, Your Majesty. Some of the younger soldiers are saying maybe the humans have a point about some things. What kind of point? Well, yesterday a private asked me why we don't have proper safety equipment for boarding parties. Apparently he saw the human security chief's suggestions about protective gear standards. Emperor Velthara's star eyes flickered dangerously. Our warriors have conquered the galaxy without safety equipment. Yes, Your Majesty, but the casualty rates are quite high. The human pointed out that proper equipment could reduce injuries by up to 70%, which would save significant medical costs and stop. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Are you telling me that our warriors are questioning our methods because a human mentioned workplace safety? It started with workplace safety, General Krikstar said carefully. But now they're asking about overtime pay, vacation time, and whether conquering planets during major holidays should count as double time. Meanwhile, the humans themselves remained completely oblivious to their growing fame. They'd been given quarters in the diplomatic wing of the capital station and were mostly just trying to figure out how to get home. Any luck reaching Earth? Jihoon asked Hyunwoo, who was working with the station's communication systems. Sort of. I can get a signal through, but the time delay is about 3 weeks each way. I sent a message explaining what happened. What did you tell them? That we got lost and accidentally found a galactic empire. Also that we'll be late for the quarterly reports. Think they'll believe it? Probably not, until we get back with proof. Su-young was reading something on a tablet that the aliens had given her. Hey, listen to this, she said. There's a betting pool on what we'll say next. Current odds are 10-1 that we'll complain about the food in the diplomatic cafeteria. Is the food bad? Dong-yuk asked. It's okay. Tastes like hospital food mixed with astronaut rations, so we probably will complain about it. Yeah, probably. Yoonji looked up from her notes. Did you know there's a whole academic conference being held about us next week? Understanding Human Psychological Patterns, a study in cultural indifference. They want to figure out why we're not impressed by anything. Are we not impressed? Minji asked. I don't think so. I mean, this stuff is cool, but it's not like it's magic or anything. It's just really advanced technology. Should we be more impressed? I have no idea. This is my first time being studied by aliens. What the humans didn't know was that their casual attitude was causing ripple effects throughout the Dominion. On worlds where beings had spent centuries in awe of the central government, people were starting to ask practical questions. If the humans could look at the planet Cracker and see an inefficient tool, what did that say about the rest of the Dominions? Military doctrine? If they could suggest improvements to the floating cities that had been unchanged for millennia, maybe other things could be improved too. If 5 lost tourists could accidentally become the most talked about beings in the galaxy just by treating everything like a normal day at work, what did that say about the rest of galactic civilization? The Emperor was getting reports of human-style thinking breaking out on dozens of worlds. Citizens were asking about efficiency improvements, safety protocols, and cost-benefit analyses. Some were even forming committees to study better ways of doing things. Your Majesty, his chief advisor said during the daily briefing, we may have a bigger problem than we thought. How much bigger? The humans aren't just unimpressed with our civilization. They're accidentally teaching everyone else to be unimpressed too. Emperor Velthara looked out at his capital city, where beings from 1,000 worlds lived and worked in structures that had inspired awe for 50,000 years. Somewhere down there, 5 humans were probably having lunch and discussing the poor urban planning of the commercial district. Get me the diplomatic corps, he said quietly. We need to figure out how to deal with 5 beings who are accidentally starting a galactic revolution just by being themselves. Outside his window, a news crew was interviewing Jae-hyun-oh about the economic implications of crystal-based architecture. By evening, his comments about sustainable building materials would be trending on social networks across half the galaxy. The humans still just wanted to go home. The galaxy, it seemed, had other plans. Legal advisor Dayung Lee was having the best week of her career, even though she was 50,000 light-years from the nearest courthouse. The Dominion had finally agreed to begin formal integration proceedings for humanity, which meant paperwork. Lots and lots of paperwork. I'm going to need environmental impact studies for all crystal mining operations, she told the confused alien bureaucrat sitting across from her, both current and projected for the next 50 years. Environmental impact? The bureaucrat asked. He was a tall, thin creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet. Yeah, you know, effects on local ecosystems, atmospheric composition, wildlife displacement, soil contamination, that sort of thing. But we have been mining crystals for thousands of years. Right, which is why we need the studies. Baseline data, contamination, levels, species impact assessments. I'll also need your safety protocols, worker compensation records, and accident reports. The bureaucrat's compound eyes started twitching. We do not have accident reports. You don't track workplace injuries? Injuries are a sign of weakness among crystal miners. Dayong made a note on her tablet. Okay, that's definitely going to be a problem. We'll need to implement a proper safety reporting system before any integration can proceed. In another office, systems analyst Sunho Park was explaining efficiency improvements to a group of increasingly overwhelmed Dominion administrators. Your supply chain management is honestly pretty terrible, he said, pulling up charts on the wall display. You're shipping raw materials from mining worlds to processing centers that are sometimes on the complete opposite side of the galaxy, then shipping the finished products back past the original mining sites to reach consumers. The shipping routes follow ancient trade agreements, one of the administrators protested weakly. Ancient doesn't mean good, Sunho replied cheerfully. Look, I've run the numbers. If you optimize your logistics network, you could reduce shipping costs by 23% and cut delivery times in half. But these agreements have existed for millennia, and they're costing you billions of credits every year. I've prepared a presentation about implementing dynamic routing algorithms based on Earth's logistics models. The administrators looked at the presentation title, Supply Chain Optimization: Why Amazon Prime Could Teach the Galaxy How to Ship Packages. None of them understood what Amazon Prime was, but they were pretty sure they were about to find out. Meanwhile, Captain Jehoon Park was having a meeting with Emperor Velthara himself. The Emperor had hoped that dealing directly with the human leader would be simpler than working through their various specialists. He was wrong. "So let me understand this correctly," Jehoon said, reading from a tablet. "You want to officially welcome humanity into the Dominion, but you haven't actually explained what that means in practical terms. You would become citizens of the greatest empire in galactic history," the Emperor said. "Okay, but what are the actual benefits? Healthcare, education, trade agreements, defense treaties? What about tax obligations, legal jurisdiction, cultural lays, autonomy?" The Emperor stared at him. In 50,000 years of ruling, no one had ever asked about the practical details of joining the Dominion. Most species either submitted immediately or were conquered. "We provide protection," the Emperor said slowly. "From what?" "From threats to your world." "What threats?" "Our biggest security concern is space debris, and we handle that fine ourselves." "There could be hostile species. Are there any hostile species specifically targeting Earth?" "Well, no, but then what exactly are we paying for?" The Emperor was discovering that negotiating with humans was like trying to have a philosophical discussion with an accountant. Elsewhere in the capital, the humans' casual approach to galactic bureaucracy was causing chaos throughout the dominions. Government Admiral Su-Young Cho had submitted a noise complaint about the war fleet's daily victory chants. "It's very loud," she explained to the fleet admiral. "And it happens at 5 in the morning, which is inconsiderate to people trying to sleep." The victory chants have inspired fear across the galaxy for 10,000 years. I'm sure they have, but there's probably a noise ordinance about this kind of thing. Have you checked with local housing authorities? The fleet admiral had never heard of housing authorities. Neither had anyone else in the military command structure. Within hours, they were frantically trying to figure out what housing authorities were and whether the Dominion had any. Engineer Minji Kim had requested full technical specifications for the space station's life support systems. "It's just basic safety information," she told the station's chief engineer. "If there's an emergency, we should know where the backup systems are located. The life support systems are beyond the understanding of most species," the chief engineer replied proudly. "Really? Let me take a look." 3 hours later, Minji had identified 17 potential failure points and suggested upgrades that would improve system reliability by 40%. She also pointed out that the emergency procedures were only posted in 3 languages, none of which were used by most of the station's residents. "You might want to add some universal symbols," she suggested, "and maybe color coding for the emergency exits." The chief engineer was beginning to understand why the Emperor was having daily headaches. Communications officer Hyun-Woo Lee had asked for a copy of the Dominion's constitution. "We do not have a constitution," the legal department admitted. "How? Do you govern 50,000 star systems without a constitution?" "The Emperor's will is law." "But what happens when he's not available? What about checks and balances, due process, appeals procedures?" "Appeals procedures?" "Yeah. Like if someone disagrees with a decision, How do they appeal it? They do not disagree with the emperor. But what if they do anyway? The legal department had never considered this possibility. The concept of appealing the emperor's decisions was so foreign to them that they didn't even have words for it in most galactic languages. By the end of the week, the humans had accidentally filed more paperwork than the Dominion government usually processed in a year. They had requested environmental studies, safety assessments, constitutional reviews, and efficiency audits. They had submitted complaints, suggestions, and improvement proposals. Most importantly, they had asked questions that no one had ever thought to ask before. Why do you mine crystals in the most expensive possible way? Why don't you have safety equipment? Why is there no appeals process for legal decisions? Why are your trade routes so inefficient? Why don't you have noise ordinances? Each question led to more questions, which led to committees being formed to study the questions, which led to reports being written about the committees, which led to more questions. Da-Young was particularly pleased with the progress. I think we're really making headway, she told Ji-hoon during their evening meeting. They've agreed to conduct full environmental impact studies for all major industrial operations. How long will that take? Ji-hoon asked. About 50 years, assuming they start immediately. 50 years? Well, they've never done environmental impact studies before. They'll have to develop the methodology, train personnel, establish baseline measurements, conduct the actual studies, review the results, and then file reports. It's a big job. Sunho nodded from across the table. Same thing with the logistics optimization. They want to implement my suggestions, but they'll need to completely restructure their shipping networks. I estimate about 30 years for full implementation. 30 years to optimize shipping? They're starting from scratch. The current system is actually less efficient than random chance, so anything we do will be an improvement. That evening, Emperor Velthara held an emergency session with his advisors. How? He asked slowly. Did 5 lost tourists manage to paralyze the entire Dominion government with paperwork? They appear to treat everything as if it's a normal administrative process, his chief advisor explained. They're asking for things that any reasonable civilization should have, but that we've never needed before, such as environmental protection laws, worker safety standards, constitutional rights, appeals processes, noise ordinances, financial audits. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Are we not a reasonable civilization? His advisors looked at each other nervously. That was exactly the question they'd been trying not to ask. We're the most powerful empire in galactic history, General Krikstar said carefully. But are we reasonable? No one could answer that question. The humans had accidentally made it impossible to answer without admitting some uncomfortable truths about how the Dominion actually worked. Get me the humans, the Emperor said finally. Maybe they can explain how to be reasonable. It was the first time in 50,000 years that the ruler of the galaxy had asked anyone for advice on basics, governance. The humans, meanwhile, were just happy that someone was finally taking their paperwork seriously. Engineer Taehyun Yu was not trying to revolutionize galactic engineering when he fixed the Dominion's mysterious engine failures. He was just bored, and the broken engines were making an annoying noise outside his quarters. Have you tried turning them off and on again? He asked the chief engineer of the capital station. These are quantum flux engines powered by crystallized starlight, the chief engineer replied stiffly. They do not simply turn off and on. Okay, but when's the last time you did basic maintenance on them? Maintenance? Yeah, like cleaning the filters, checking the fluid levels, replacing worn parts. The chief engineer looked confused. The engines are powered by cosmic forces beyond mortal understanding. Right. But they still have moving parts, don't they? Moving parts wear out. 3 hours later, Tae-hyun had identified the problem. Nobody had cleaned the engine filters in about 2,000 years. The mysterious failures were basically the galactic equivalent of a clogged air filter in a car. You should probably set up a regular maintenance schedule, he suggested, wiping grease off his hands. Check the filters monthly, replace the quantum flux regulators every 6 months, that sort of thing. Word spread quickly throughout the Dominion's engineering corps. Within a week, mysterious engine failures had dropped by 90% across the entire galactic fleet. Engineers who had spent centuries puzzling over inexplicable breakdowns suddenly found themselves with very little to do. Dr. Nari Choi was having a similar experience with the Dominion's medical mysteries. So this plague has been killing people. For 6 months? She asked the head of the medical council. The Crimson Death strikes without warning, the alien doctor said sadly. We have tried every advanced treatment known to galactic medicine. What are the symptoms? Fever, weakness, red spots on the skin, digestive problems. Nari frowned. That sounds like food poisoning. Food poisoning? Yeah. Has anyone checked the water supply? It turned out that the Crimson Death was caused by a broken sewage treatment plant that had been leaking into the water system for months. The plague that stumped their best scientists was solved by basic sanitation. You might want to implement regular water quality testing, Nari suggested, and maybe require food service workers to wash their hands more often. The concept of washing hands to prevent disease was so revolutionary in some parts of the galaxy that Nari accidentally became the founder of 3 new medical schools. Meanwhile, agricultural specialist Young-soo Kim was visiting farming worlds and accidentally ending famines. Why do you only plant one type of crop? He asked the farmers on Kethavar, a world that had been struggling with soil depletion for centuries. It is the way of our ancestors, the lead farmer explained. But if you rotate crops, you can restore the soil naturally. Plant nitrogen-fixing legumes one season, grains the next, then let some fields rest. Basic crop rotation. The farmers stared at him. You can restore soil? Sure. Earth figured this out thousands of years ago. Here, let me show you. Within a year, agricultural productivity on Kethvar had increased by 300%. Yongsoo's simple farming techniques were being called miraculous and revolutionary across dozens of agricultural worlds. Trade Representative Jae-hyun was making similar improvements to the Dominion's economy, mostly by accident. This 500-year war is expensive, he observed during a trade council meeting. Have you considered just setting up a neutral trading post instead of fighting over resources? A trading post? Yeah. Put a space station at the disputed border. Let both sides trade there. They get what they need, you collect taxes on the transactions, everybody wins. The war ended within a month. Both sides were making too much money trading with each other to remember why they'd been fighting in the first place. Jae-hyun had accidentally invented peace through capitalism. You could probably do this with most of your territorial disputes, he suggested to the emperor during a trade meeting. Fighting wars is incredibly expensive. Trade agreements are much more cost-effective. Emperor Velthara was beginning to understand why his military advisors looked nervous whenever the humans made suggestions. Transportation engineer Ji-hye Lee fixed the capital's traffic problems by suggesting something radical. Traffic lights. So, ships just fly wherever they want? She asked the traffic control center. Flight paths are determined by the pilot's skill and honor, the traffic controller explained. And how many accidents do you have per day? Approximately 300. 300? Every day? It is the price of freedom in the skies. Jihi looked out at the chaos of ships weaving randomly through the air around the capital. Has anyone tried using a traffic control system? Traffic control? You know, designated flight lanes, scheduled departure times, traffic signals to manage intersections. After implementing basic traffic control, accidents dropped to fewer than 5 per day. Commute times were cut in half. Fuel efficiency improved by 40%. The traffic controller, who had been managing the chaos of freedom for 2 centuries, was promoted to head of the new Department of Rational Transportation Planning. Information Systems Specialist Minju, Park accidentally revolutionized galactic communication by asking a simple question. Why don't you have directories? Directories? Ask the head of the Communication Guild. Lists of who to contact for what. If I need to reach someone on a specific world, how do I find their contact information? You send a message to the planetary governor who forwards it to the regional administrator who contacts the local officials who might know the person you're looking for. That seems inefficient. What if you just made a list? The concept of a phone book was so revolutionary that Minju accidentally created the first galactic internet. Within 6 months, beings across the Dominion were looking up contact information instead of sending messages through 15 levels of bureaucracy. The humans had no idea they were revolutionizing galactic civilization. From their perspective, they were just pointing out obvious problems and suggesting common-sense solutions. The engine maintenance thing is pretty basic, Tae-hyun told his colleagues during dinner. I'm surprised they hadn't figured it out. Same with the food poisoning, Nari agreed. Hand washing and water treatment are like the first things you learn in medical school. And crop rotation has been standard farming practice on Earth for thousands of years, Young-soo added. Captain Ji-hoon Park was reviewing reports from Earth about their extended absence. Headquarters wants to know when we'll be back. Apparently, our efficiency reports are overdue. How long have we been here? So-young asked. About 3 months. Feels longer. These aliens have a lot of problems that need fixing. Should we tell them we're just suggesting basic stuff that any advanced civilization should already know? The group considered this. Nah, Minji said finally. They seem happy with the improvements, and it's not like we're trying to take over or anything. We're just helping out while we wait for someone to figure out how to get us home. What they didn't know was that their basic stuff was spreading across the galaxy at light speed. Worlds that had struggled with the same problems for millennia were suddenly experiencing unprecedented prosperity and efficiency. The Dominion's productivity was increasing exponentially. Wars were ending through economic cooperation. Famines were disappearing through proper agriculture. Diseases were being cured through basic sanitation. And it was all happening because 5 lost humans had looked at galactic civilization and thought, they could probably do this better. Emperor Velthara was receiving daily reports about worlds that were transforming themselves using human-style improvements. His empire was becoming more prosperous and peaceful than it had ever been. He was also receiving reports that his citizens were starting to wonder why they needed an emperor, when they could just solve problems themselves using basic common sense. The humans had accidentally started the most successful revolution in galactic history, and they still thought they were just killing time until someone could give them directions. Home. Tomorrow I think I'll look at their waste management system, Tae-hyun mentioned as they finished dinner. The recycling protocols seem really inefficient, None of them noticed Emperor Velthara's advisor, who was listening from the next table and frantically taking notes about human plans to revolutionize galactic waste management. The revolution would continue tomorrow, whether the humans meant it to or not. The rebellion began with the best of intentions and the worst possible planning. Lord Commander Zethkul of the Crimson Claw Empire had spent 3 months watching humans casually dismantle everything he thought he knew about galactic civilization, and he'd finally had enough. "These humans," he declared to his assembled war council, "have made a mockery of everything we hold sacred. They look upon our greatest achievements and see only inefficiency. They treat our most fearsome weapons as workplace safety hazards." The War Council, composed of representatives from 12 of the Dominion's most traditionally warrior-like species, nodded in agreement. They'd all had similar experiences with the humans. "They asked me about our overtime policies," growled General Vraktar of the Iron Talon Fleet. "During a formal military inspection, they wanted to know if we get hazard pay for boarding enemy vessels." One of them suggested I use a scheduling app for conquest planning, added Admiral Kreshna. A scheduling app, as if galactic warfare were some kind of business meeting. Lord Commander Zethkul slammed his armored fist on the war table. "No more! We will show the galaxy that there are still species who understand the proper way of things. We will demonstrate that not everyone can be bureaucratized." The rebellion's first order of business was writing a manifesto. This took longer than expected. "What exactly are we rebelling against?" asked General Vraktar. "The humans, obviously," Zethkul replied. "But what have they actually done wrong? They're boring. They make everything boring. Is being boring illegal? It should be." After 6 hours of debate, they settled on a manifesto titled Declaration of War Against Excessive Practicality and the Beings Who Promote It. It was 12 pages long and included a detailed complaint about how the humans had ruined the mystique of cosmic warfare by suggesting proper equipment maintenance. The second order of business was deciding how to actually conduct their rebellion. "We could attack their ship," suggested Admiral Kreshna. "With what justification?" asked General Vraktar. "They're dangerously reasonable?" "That's not really a casus belli." "What if we declared them a threat to galactic security?" "Based on what?" "They fixed our engine problems and ended the Crimson Death Plague." The War Council sat in frustrated silence. It was very difficult to justify a war against people whose main crime was being helpful. Meanwhile, the humans were completely unaware that anyone was planning to rebel against them. Diplomat Heun Kim was having what she thought was a pleasant conversation with Lord Commander Zethkul about filing proper war declarations. "So you want to declare war on us?" she asked, reviewing his paperwork. "That's fine, but you'll need to fill out Forms 27B through 31C first." "Forms?" Zethkul asked weakly. "Standard war declaration paperwork. You need to specify your grievances, proposed resolution mechanisms, estimated duration of hostilities, environmental impact assessments for any planned battles, and insurance information for potential damages." "Insurance? Well, if you're planning to blow things up, someone has to pay for repairs. Do you have liability coverage for military actions?" Zethkul had spent 20 years as one of the most feared military commanders in the galaxy. He'd conquered 17 star systems and had never been asked about insurance coverage. What if we just attack without declaring war?" he asked hopefully. "That would be illegal," Heun said cheerfully. "But if you want to file a formal complaint first, we can probably work something out through arbitration." "Arbitration? It's like a trial, but faster and cheaper. Very popular for resolving disputes without violence. Strategic advisor Sung-Min Ryu was having a similar conversation with the rebellion's intelligence chief. "You want to overthrow the terrifyingly boring humans?" Sung-Min read from the intelligence report. "That's an interesting grievance. Have you considered forming a union instead?" "A union? Sure. If you have workplace complaints about how the humans are changing things, collective bargaining might be more effective than armed rebellion. Plus, it's legal." "But we want to fight." "Fighting is really expensive," Sung-Min pointed out, "and the paperwork is terrible. Have you seen the incident reports you have to file after each battle? Way more hassle than just negotiating." "We're warriors. We don't negotiate." "Everyone negotiates. Even warriors negotiate surrender terms." The rebellion was off to a frustrating start. Every time they tried to plan military action, someone asked them about permits, insurance, or proper filing procedures. Things got worse when they actually attempted their first attack. The target was a human supply convoy, 3 ships carrying mundane items like coffee, replacement parts, and entertainment media to various worlds that had requested them. It should have been an easy victory for the 12 warships of the Crimson Claw Empire. Attack formation. Lord Commander Zethkul commanded. "Show them the fury of true warriors." The attack lasted exactly 4 minutes. The humans didn't fight back in any conventional sense. Instead, Security Chief Wu Jin Jiang activated what he called standard defensive protocols. The first thing that happened was that the human ships started broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention attacking vessels," came Wu Jin's calm voice. "You are engaged in hostile action against civilian cargo transports. Please cease aggressive behavior and prepare for inspection by security forces." "Security forces?" Zethkul laughed. "What security forces? There are only 3 of you." That's when the Dominion's rapid response fleet appeared. It turned out that the humans had accidentally revolutionized space traffic control, which included implementing an automated distress system. The moment the human ships detected hostile action, alerts went out to every security vessel within 50 light years. 67 Dominion warships surrounded the 12 rebel vessels in under 3 minutes. "Attention, Rebel Fleet," Admiral Theorex announced. "You are under arrest for attacking civilian vessels without proper documentation." "Documentation?" Zethkul sputtered. "War Declaration Forms 27B through 31C. Also, you don't have valid military insurance for this action." The rebellion's flagship was boarded by Dominion security forces who treated the whole thing like a routine traffic stop. "Do you have a license?" "For this military action?" the boarding officer asked. "A license? Military operations require proper permits. Also, I need to see proof of insurance and your environmental impact assessment." "Environmental impact assessment for space combat?" "Standard requirement since the humans suggested it. Very sensible policy, really." Lord Commander Zethkul found himself sitting in a holding cell next to Admiral Kreshna, both of them staring at a stack of paperwork. "I don't understand," Krishna said quietly. "We're fierce warriors. We've conquered worlds. How did we end up being processed like people filing incorrect paperwork?" Zethkul suggested. "Yeah." Meanwhile, the humans were reviewing the incident report. "So they attacked us because we're boring?" Minji asked, reading Wu Jin's summary. "Apparently," Wu Jin replied. "They seem to think we've made warfare too bureaucratic." "Have we?" "Well, we did suggest implementing proper safety protocols and documentation requirements. Those seem like reasonable suggestions." "That's what I thought. Captain Jehoon Park was reading the rebels' manifesto with genuine interest. They have some valid points about maintaining cultural traditions, he said. Maybe we could work out a compromise. What kind of compromise? Heian asked. Well, they want to keep the dramatic aspects of military culture, right? What if we set up designated areas for traditional combat, like sports leagues, but for warriors? Competitive warfare? Sure. Organized tournaments, proper safety equipment, medical staff on standby, that sort of thing. They get to fight, we get to make sure nobody dies unnecessarily. The idea of warrior sports leagues turned out to be incredibly popular. Within a month, the former rebels were organizing the first Galactic Combat Championships, complete with proper safety protocols, medical coverage, and really good marketing. Lord Commander Zethkul became the League Commissioner. This is actually much more satisfying than real warfare, he admitted to Jehoon during the opening ceremonies. Better scheduling, proper medical care, and the fans are great. Plus no paperwork about environmental damage, Jehoon pointed out. That was the worst part of traditional conquest. Do you know how many forms you have to file when you accidentally damage a moon? The rebellion had officially ended, though most people never noticed it had begun. The rebels had been successfully converted into sports administrators, and everyone seemed happier with the arrangement. So that's handled, Wu Jin reported to the group. The warriors get to fight in organized leagues, the fans get entertainment, and nobody has to fill out incident reports for actual battles. Great, Su-Yung said. What's next? Well, the Emperor wants to meet with us tomorrow about finalizing the transition, Jehoon said. I think he wants to officially hand over administrative duties. Hand over administrative duties? Yeah. Apparently, we've been running most of the Empire for the past few months without realizing it. The humans looked at each other. Are we accidentally in charge of the galaxy? Minji asked. Looks that way, Jehoon replied. Huh, Dongyuk said. That explains why everyone keeps asking us to approve things. Should we be worried about that? Probably, Su-Yung said. But the paperwork is finally getting organized, so 6 months after accidentally entering the Celestial Dominion, Colonial Administrator Yujin Song was managing 17 star systems from her morning commute. She'd figured out how to connect her tablet to the Dominion's quantum communication network, which meant she could approve infrastructure projects and resolve trade disputes while riding the transport to the capital station's central hub. Morning, Your Majesty, she said cheerfully to Emperor Velthara, who was sitting across from her reviewing his daily schedule. Good morning, Administrator Song, the former ruler of 50,000 star systems replied. I have the quarterly productivity reports ready for your review. Yujin took the tablet he handed her and scrolled through the numbers while sipping her coffee. These look good. Agricultural output is up 30%, manufacturing efficiency has improved by 40%, and we haven't had any wars in 3 months. The warrior sports leagues are very popular, Velthara noted. Much more cost-effective than actual conquest. Great. Oh, the mining guild wants to expand operations in Sector 12. Can you handle the environmental impact assessment? Of course. I'll have it ready by this afternoon. It was a perfectly normal conversation between a busy administrator and her assistant, except that the assistant used to be the absolute ruler of the galaxy, and neither of them thought this was particularly strange anymore. Cultural Ambassador Minseo Han was having her own impact on galactic civilization, though she didn't realize it. She'd connected her music streaming account to the station's entertainment network, and her K-pop playlist had somehow spread to 40,000 worlds. The beings of Kethvar have formed a dance group, reported the cultural liaison, a confused alien who looked like a cross between a butterfly and a disco ball. They are performing something called choreography to your musical selections. That's nice, Minseo said, not looking up from her work. Music brings people together. What she didn't know was that her accidentally shared playlist had started the first truly galactic pop culture phenomenon. Beings across the Dominion were learning Korean words, forming dance groups, and creating their own versions of music videos. 3 different species had declared her playlist to be sacred cultural heritage. Also, the cultural liaison continued. Nervously, 17 worlds have requested official copies of what they're calling the sacred rhythms of the human ambassador. Just tell them to download it from the streaming service, Minseo replied absently. The app is free. By evening, 43 worlds had their first ever streaming apps. The concept of freely accessible entertainment was so revolutionary that it accidentally ended several cultural wars that had been fought over access to art and music. Meanwhile, Captain Jihoon Park was finally reading through the stack of official documents that had been accumulating on his desk for months. Most of them seemed to be certificates, proclamations, and honorary titles that various worlds had given him. Supreme Administrator of Rational Governance, he read aloud. Honorary Emperor of Practical Solutions. Grand Marshal of Common Sense. What is all this stuff? Official recognition of your administrative authority, explained his secretary, a cheerful alien who looked like a living filing cabinet. Each world that implements your suggestions sends a formal acknowledgement. How many are there? Currently, 47,632 certificates of administrative recognition. Ji-hoon stared at the number. That's a lot of worlds. Yes, sir. Would you like me to file them alphabetically or by star system? Alphabetically is fine, Ji-hoon said weakly. Wait, how many star systems are we accidentally managing? Currently, approximately 49,812. That's almost the entire Dominion. Yes, sir. The remaining systems are expected to implement your administrative improvements within the next 6 months. Ji-hoon put his head in his hands. We accidentally took over the galaxy. Yes, sir. Very efficiently. 2. The reality was that the humans had become the de facto government of the Celestial Dominion without anyone officially declaring it. They'd just solved so many problems so effectively that people naturally started bringing them new problems to solve. Trade Representative Jae-hyun. Oh was discovering this when he found himself accidentally mediating a territorial dispute between 3 different species. So you're fighting over mining rights to this asteroid belt, he said, looking at the star charts. But none of you are actually mining the asteroids. We are preserving our ancestral claim, declared the leader of the first delegation. We are maintaining our traditional sovereignty, insisted the second. We are protecting our cultural heritage, announced the third. But nobody's getting any actual minerals, Jae-hyun pointed out. That is not the point. Okay, but what if you formed a joint mining cooperative? Everyone gets a share of the profits based on their contribution, and you can rotate administrative duties annually. Cooperative? Sure. Like a business partnership, but for governments. Very popular on Earth. 3 hours later, the 3 species had formed their first joint venture and were making plans to expand the cooperative model to other disputed territories. The territorial dispute that had simmered for 2 centuries was resolved with a handshake.